am Sandra Finley, and I'm President and CEO of League of Black Women, and I want to welcome all of you here to the Illinois 5th District State Representative Candidates Forum. Particularly for sponsoring and supporting this effort, we want to thank the Adler University, where we sit and where we are hosted, and I think we should give applause right now. We also want to thank Equal Vote Local, and of course, we want to thank the League of Black Women. I wanted to let you know something about the work of the League of Black Women. It was founded in 1970, and its work has, over these years, has made it the preeminent organization for leadership research, education, and advocacy for the black woman's advancement in leadership. Whether she leads in her community, in her home, in her workplace, anywhere on the planet. The idea that was founded in 1970, that if we focused on her and her relationships to our communities through family and community connections, that what we would be doing probably would be finding a point of access that would feed the entire community, a family, and then the world as she goes and grows. And so her preeminent space today, the dominance of her voting power, the dominance of her $1.3 trillion spending power, the dominance of her leadership with regards to being one of the most highly educated demographics in America today, and certainly she also leads as one of the demographics that opens up more businesses than any other, the rate at which she opens businesses. All of those things says that she's a major player and she's here today to stay and lead and build and do. I encourage you to know more about what I know, what we know about black women and our potential and our prominence by taking time to go to the League of Black Women's website and read the Black Women's Economic Agenda. We call her Black Womanomics. If you take time to do that, you're going to be able to understand what we know about ourselves and our potential, and you're also going to be able to see how you connect with what it is that will be the modern way forward through economic advancement led by black women. I also have the privilege of being able to introduce our moderator tonight. She is Dr. Naomi Davis, and she's a longtime activist in the 5th District, where she resides, and she is an urban theorist, an attorney, the activist, as I mentioned, and she's founder and CEO of an organization called BIG, B-I-G, which stands for Blacks in Green. It's a national sustainability network and community development corporation. She's created the Sustainable Square Mile Workbook to implement BIG's courses, the 8 principles of green village building, and Grannynomics. Naomi consults nationally on best practices for the walkable village in a city of villages where every household can walk to work, walk to shop, walk to learn, and walk to play. Now, BIG's emerging urban homestead estate development in the West Woodlawn area aims to usher in an age of the neighbor, investor, and developer. Just think of that, neighbor, investor, and developer. It also advances the conservation, lifestyle, the beautiful life for moderate income families and buffer city gentrification. She is lead GA, Green for All Fellow, and serves on the Great Lakes Advisory Board. Just count with your fingers with me. The Great Lakes Advisory Board, the Illinois Natural Resources Advisory Board, the Illinois Climate Table, the Local First Chicago, the Obama Library Southside CBA Coalition, the Woodlawn Chamber of Commerce, the Woodlawn Summit Organization, and she is a founding board member of our Revolution of Chicago. And that's just the stuff I selected to talk to you about. Got nothing to do with the full weight and reach and depth of the woman. So I'd like to ask you to bring her to the podium with a round of applause and get ready to enjoy and learn and be nourished by the great Dr. Naomi Davis.
Little height adjustment. Greetings, cousins. How y'all doing? Very good, very good. Look, I want to begin with a show-enough shout-out to Adler. I want to say it's a beautiful campus, is it not? And I want to say thank you. I have, for the first time since last fall, an intern from Adler, a beautifully bright, ambitious, hardworking young woman, and so I'm familiar with the product. And I want to say that also a more just society, is that beautiful? Does that resound with everyone? And so we have some really diverse candidates here tonight. You're going to be able to hear for yourself, you know, how is my self-interest expressed? And you'll have some really good, strong choices to make. I'm going to, first of all, acknowledge from Calumet City, one of our dignitaries in the audience tonight, 3rd Ward Alderman DeAndre Tillman. Did I get that correct? Is DeAndre Tillman, bless you. Thank you for being here tonight. And I want to say, on the other hand, that Ken Duncan was invited and selected not to attend tonight. And yet we're going to have a robust discussion and some excellent choices. I want to say that you've heard on many occasions this koan, this almost cliche, a tale of two cities in Chicago. Have you not? Yeah, and certainly we know that for those of you who know the body of the 5th District, Representative District, it is the embodiment of that tale of two cities. It is stretching, as they say, from the Gold Coast to the Soul Coast, from way up north around Goethe down to 70, into the 70s, and yes. Okay. We're going to take a little break in my soliloquy to also announce one of my colleagues who cherishes, as I do, the conservation lifestyle, Commissioner Carrie Steele from the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District. Hey, sis. Thank you for being here tonight. So the idea that we have embodied in this race a disparate set of worlds. And on the one hand, black communities have been destabilized by school privatization and closures, and generations of children have grown up in a system of educational apartheid supported by real estate property taxes, which, in addition to producing systemically inferior schools in poorer neighborhoods, has also been widely exposed as systematically racist itself, improperly extracting $300 million and more a year from Chicago's poorest householders to subsidize the inequitably reduced real estate taxes of Cook County's richest taxpayers. And you can read all about it in an extensive expose in the Tribune from June of last year, I believe. But currently, funds are being administered through the state to partially compensate some victims of the foreclosure fraud that was disproportionately perpetrated by banks against black people. CRA payment commitments by banks not fully honored. Payday loans and currency exchange rates increased through state agencies like the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulation for the Currency Exchange Currency Exchange Association of Illinois, represented by Jenner and Block, big attorneys. We have the National Fair Housing Alliance has just filed suit against Deutsche Bank and Ocwen Financial and others for a pattern of discriminatory negligence in the property care of REO properties. REO, real estate owned, the foreclosure fraud, then on the heels of that, this disproportionate this disproportionate way of caring for properties in white communities, more care in white communities, while intentionally perpetrating the withholding of services to those in black communities. And of course, you know that this accelerates the loss of value of homes that are nearby, that are still left standing, those that are still left standing after this tsunami of practices. And so part of the whole system problem common to black communities everywhere is embodied in one part of the district. And so I want to share with you that this is the kind of financing parity which has been, or lack of parity, that has been increasing the racial wealth disparity in Illinois and elsewhere, and it's going to accelerate until it stops. So part of what we're going to talk about tonight are what are specific plans that some of our candidates have for reversing these trends and practices, and what other solutions they will bring to their seat as a 5th District state representative. So I want to say that kudos to the League of Black Women. I myself am a member of the League, and as you know, a 5th District resident. And we're going to get into our first question, which is about that paper that was referenced by Ms. Findley yesterday in our debate and this evening as well. But first, I'm going to read you a few ground rules. I'm going to, by a random distribution of the cards, fix our order of speakers for tonight. No fix has been put in. I know this is Chicago, but we're just tonight. We are just. So here go the rules. And I think I'll have to put my other set of eyes on for this. Let's see. Candidates will draw lots, the ones that I've just described, to determine the order in which they will give their opening statements. Closing statements will be in the reverse order. The candidate who makes the first opening statement will move to the end of the line for the first question, and this rotation will continue throughout the question period. Opening statements shall be no more than 2 minutes, closing statements the same, and when the allotted time has expired, candidates will be allowed to finish a sentence before the moderator, me, or timekeeper, Miss Teresa, there at the back of the room. You'll get to know her, I promise you, if we have to interrupt to conclude the statement. So following the statements, opening statements, the written questions that have been submitted by the committee, by audience members, and others online will be submitted to the candidates for discussion. I may choose to pose a follow-up question, and candidates will alternate answering the questions and will be given 90 seconds to answer the questions. After each candidate has addressed the question, each one will have 1 minute to challenge, clarify, rebut, or summarize. So we're really trying to have a substantive discussion here. And finally, we have culled through a lot of questions. We've come down to a consensus about some of the things that are most important, and we are reserving some time at the end of tonight's forum for your questions from the audience. So if you'd like to write your question, if you have an aha moment, just raise your hand and an index card will be brought around to you. And with no further ado, maybe a little drum roll, we will fix our order for the speakers tonight, okay? Okay, Ms. Bullock, let me just make my recording here. And number 2? I am number 2. And now let me think. Let me get my calculator out. That would be you, Mr. Robinson.
Ray Charles, thank you.
Okay, excellent. All right, So we'll have our opening statements, and then we'll have our first question. Ms. Pollock.
All right. Lights green. Okay, sounds like I'm working here. My name is Felicia Bullock. I am a born and raised Chicagoan. I've lived here my entire life. I'm a product of Chicago Public Schools for both elementary and high school. I attended Northern Illinois University, where I received a political science degree. However, I graduated in the recession, so when I graduated, I said, what job will you pay me for? What job is paying? That's the job that I'll take. So I landed in procurement, something that I never really thought that I would do. So I've been in procurement since 2010. I currently work as a buyer for the University of Chicago. I think that some of my procurement skill set will enhance my ability to be a great state representative. You know, negotiating, budgeting, all of that will come into play in Springfield. I'm running for office because I want to see effective leadership in Springfield. I want someone to be there to be a voice for the people, and I know that I will go down there and be a voice for the people. I want to see access to quality health care. I want to see adequate funding for our public school systems, including higher education, and I want our community safe and our children safe. I moved into Bronzeville, which is a part of the district, my first apartment out of college, and I saw then the potential that this district has. And I want to be a part of what helps it grow, a part of what helps it become the best community that it can be for our families. And that is why I'm here to ask for your support and for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Saeed.
Good evening. My name is Dilara Saeed, and I'm tossing my scarf into the ring for Illinois State Representative of the 5th District. I'm a product of the Chicago Public Schools and the kid of a CTA ticket agent and a U.S. Postal Mail clerk. They were both union members, and what they taught me is that work hard, try hard, and ask for God's grace. I actually have next to my nightstand my diploma from Head Start Preschool. I'm a geek, so I hang on to it, right? Why do I have the diploma next to my bedstand? It's because my mom always taught me, never forget where you came from. Never forget where you came from. Yusuf and I have been able to build a life. I'm a teacher, and he's a doctor. We've worked our entire life for social services, hospitals, and at schools. And we've done it because the other thing our parents taught us is make the world better because you're in it. We wanted to make sure that we built a life, but that every other person that we would ever come in contact with would be also able to build a life and move forward. Guys, Head Start, but I'm not going back. I'm proud of what we've done. It's been a little bit of hard work, a little bit of God's grace, and a little bit of good luck. We worked and followed the rules, but a lot of us work and follow the rules, but the rules don't always work for us. And that's why I'm running for office. My colleagues and I care about this district. We know this district well. But to be a state rep, you also have to know the state and have worked in Lisle, in Naperville, in Joliet, and in Mattoon, rural Illinois. I've been all across the state, and I believe that as state representative, I can represent
Ms. Saeed,
our
you're at
district
2 minutes.
across the state. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Lamont Robinson, and I'm also running for state representative in the 5th District. But let me step back and share a little bit about Lamont Robinson. Growing up in Chatham, in between King Drive and Cottage Grove. King Drive, police officers, Chicago Public School teachers, firemen. Cottage Grove, plagued with drugs, violence. But my mother, who's here tonight, kept me on the right track. And that is why I am in front of you today. I had some great mentors. Commissioner Carrie Steele, who's here with us tonight, her father, John Steele, Judge John Steele, former alderman, also kept me on the right track, which is why I mentor today. I run an organization that prepares African American young men to go to colleges all across the country. These young men, I have provided mentorship to them. It is another reason that I'm here with you today. It's great to be at an institution of higher learning because I'm an educator. I'm a professor at Harold Washington College, where I teach entrepreneurship, business management, business marketing. I help people to start businesses. I'm also a small business owner in Bronzeville and Humboldt Park. I have created jobs. I also serve on economic development boards. I have brought affordable housing to Bronzeville. I have brought affordable housing to Bronzeville, I've also brought jobs to Bronzeville. I've created economic development. And so when you're looking at the candidates, it's not what they are going to do, but what have they already done to move the 5th District forward. And so I stand in front of you asking for your support to continue to do the work that I have already been doing in the Bronzeville community as well as in the 5th District. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates, for your opening statements. And here we go. I am going to back us up to the foundational pillars of the League of Black Women. The purpose, as they state, is economic access for parity across all sectors and claiming the right to intentional pursuit of joyful living. It gives you a lift, doesn't it? Yeah. Mission: to reverse 400 years of systematic exclusion, decondition ourselves away from servitude and powerlessness, gain freedom to move on public with the presumption that our lives are inherently of value, and fully participate as equal partners in an ownership society. So you'll hear a lot of talk tonight about wealth building and what works, and so we do understand that ownership is one of those major building blocks. So the four pillars are economic security, economic equality, economic access, and intentional pursuit of joyful living. So the question for our candidates this evening is, which parts of the Black women's economic agenda resonated for you? And maybe 2 or 3 policy recommendations that you are ready to adopt as part of your platform to specifically ensure that government works for Black women too. And we are going to start with Ms. Said.
Thank you, Dr. Naomi. I think what the League of Black Women is trying to do and is doing is truly empowering, because what it has to do is shine a light on something that you and I don't think about enough, but probably have lived through in many different ways. I've been everything from a teacher to an administrator to a chief education officer over the last 20 years of my public service. Almost in every role I had, I knew I was being paid less than the men around me. In fact, data shows that I was probably being paid about 75% of what a man around me was being paid. And in one case, most recently, I know I was being paid even less. Now, by near the end of my career, in the last part of my career, I was able to negotiate better. But the data shows that if I was an African American woman, I would have been making less than 68% of what a man is making. These are the kinds of disparities that we women can understand, but when you are an African American woman, you truly live every single day. And those are our sisters, and we must support them. Also, wealth. $100 is the average wealth of an African American woman today. $100. I don't even have to ask you what you and I's net worth might be. But that's not all African American women, but the ones that we can support, we must support.
Thank you. And Mr. Robinson.
As a small business owner, I have put African American women in the forefront in my business. I have an office manager that has worked for me for 3 years, who is now in the process of working through Allstate Insurance to own her own agency. I'm not just talking the talk, I walk the walk. So these are things that I have already been doing and will continue to do as the next state representative in the 5th District to support African American women. I'm doing this in my company. I have an African American woman campaign manager. Again, walking the walk, talking the talk. And so understand that if I was at University of Chicago as a buyer, or I was at Chicago Public Schools, I would make sure that I would support African American women, making sure I am building relationships with them, supporting their businesses at University of Chicago. If I was at Chicago Public Schools, I would be against the closure of schools across the city of Chicago, the loss of jobs. And so, again, I would support African American women because I have been doing that all along, and I will continue to do that, again, as the next state rep in the 5th District.
Thank you.
So economic security is the pillar that stands out the most to me.
Thank you for going to the actual question.
You're welcome. So economic security is what stands out the most to me. Equal pay is definitely a big part of that. And just education. I think a lot of times we just aren't aware of what to do with our money. I know prior to being married, my husband said, we should take this finance class together. We should do budgets. And for me, that was terrifying. None of my friends were doing budgets. And I didn't want to do a budget because I didn't want to face what I was making and what I had to pay. But things like that are so important because if you aren't budgeting, you don't know where your money is going. It all goes back to, just making educated decisions. So I think that education is a big part of it. If we can have programs that are educating Black women how to properly budget and how to invest and, just properly handle their money, I think that will make all the difference.
Thank you. And so as we talk about this issue of disparity, we're going to circle back and underscore that most people understand it's a tale of two cities, but most people don't necessarily understand that even among Blacks alone, there are disparities. There is, shockingly, as reported by City Treasurer Kurt Summers in his December presentation at the City Club, data reflecting that Black Chicagoans fare significantly, measurably worse than Black Americans generally. So people, we got some work to do. Some of the data, he stated that Black Chicagoan net worth was $5,000 versus Black American net worth of $9,250. Now, compared to white Chicago, the net worth of $147,750 versus white American, a little bit lower at $127,000. So we see that white wealth in Chicago is 30 times higher than Black wealth in Chicago. This is real. This is reality. This is everyday life. Income, Black household income in Chicago, averaging $30,840 versus $34,689 nationally. Again, lower in Chicago. White Chicagoan household was $72,970 versus $61,349 nationally, or higher than the national averages, showing white Chicago household income is almost 2 1/3 times higher, or 137% higher than Black Chicago household income. This is painful and true. Unemployment, we could go on. Basically, the Black Chicago unemployment is more than 3.5 times higher than white Chicago. And so the question that we have today, and when we have all quarters calling for equity, you've heard it everywhere you turn, equity, And of course, we define equity as a way to level the playing field in the lens of who gets paid and who makes the decision. Who gets paid and who makes the decisions. So, what are your ideas for specific actions you would like to take to level the playing field for Black households in Chicago? And we're going to start with Mr. Robinson.
Thank you for that. Great question. We need to make sure that we have a seat at the table for contracts in the state of Illinois. We know all too well that the state of Illinois, the city of Chicago, the county, are giving out contracts to folks that don't look like the folks in the room. We also know that there are trade unions in the city of Chicago, and I am very happy to be supported by unions, but we need to make sure that we hold their feet to the fire. That means that we need to have compliance officers that make sure that they are keeping track of the minority contracts, making sure that they are putting folks to work that look like the folks in this room. We have to hold unions, we have to hold the state, the city, and the county accountable to making sure that African Americans are receiving their fair share of contracts. We need someone that is going to be able to fight this in Springfield, and I will be able to do that. That's extremely important. Because we do this, we can create jobs in our community that also ends the violence that we're having in Chicago. We need to do this because we can strengthen the middle class if we have a seat at the table and if we get our due share of contracts. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Bullock.
So I agree that we need to hold city, state accountable, but also the rest of the corporations that are coming to our district that are receiving tax incentives, they should be required to hire a certain amount of African American people too. We should have diversity requirements. You should have to hire a certain percentage of African Americans, a certain percentage of women, and especially our small businesses. We want to attract small businesses to the district, but at the same time, they have to be an asset to the community as well. It should be a two-way street. So I think not just on a government level or not just on a government contract level, we need to have the businesses in our district, in the city, in the state, be required to hire Black African Americans. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Said.
We're going to have a comprehensive three-prong approach: education, economic security, and criminal justice reform. In education, we know that we must have college persistence and graduation. Chicago is actually increasing in the number of Black young men and women going to college. We have to increase in the number graduating from college. In the last several years of my life, I led the team at Golden Apple that recruited from high school seniors, took them through college, helped them become teachers and principals, and brought them back to communities. At Till, at Pershing, at Mollison, all across the district, we have Golden Apple teachers who are coming back to their community to teach. This is not only education because they're preparing the next generation, but it's economic security because they're helping with college graduation. I absolutely think we have to have jobs that come to the district. The 5th District exports talent. People in 5th District that are talented go somewhere else to go to work. They come back, they go somewhere else to spend their money. 5th District must be where we work, live, play, and pray. And when the funding and the money and the resources are within this district, we will have stronger economic security. We must be able to ensure that those of our young people who are challenged, who have issues, are able to trust the police officers we are working with. And I can talk about criminal justice reform in a more comprehensive way, possibly a little bit later today.
Thank you. Thank you. And we're going to move to an actual piece of legislation, which is relatively new. It is very new, actually. It's the Future Energy Jobs Act. Who's heard of it? Raise your hand. Okay, we got a lot of education to do. That's on us. Okay, so the Illinois Clean Jobs Coalition has helped write, with the leadership of the Chicago Environmental Justice Network, has helped write this piece of legislation, which is advancing efforts to expand the clean energy and energy efficiency in an equitable manner that puts Illinois on a measurable path to renewable energy use, to an orderly and planned transition that expands economic opportunity for economically disadvantaged and environmental justice communities, and for the just and responsible phase out of our fossil fuel communities' reliance on those industries, and the power sector to reduce harmful emissions. So we are asking each of our candidates this evening to think about some of the frontline communities that suffer first and worst from greenhouse gas emissions and the pollution associated with it, and ask you, we've heard many times this call for jobs, and we've heard many times the promise of jobs. What will you do to provide the funding that's necessary for the outreach and education in Black communities and for the tracking of the actual jobs that happen regarding placement, retention, and other industry statistics to ensure that communities of color are advancing in the solar field and renewable energy field? What will you do? And we're starting with Ms. Bullock.
So I think that this is a great piece of legislation. I want to say that there are currently tons of businesses, schools, even the city that track diversity, right? So that's not a difficult thing to do. So we need to have a system in place that is going to track how many people are they hiring from our community. That's also, to me, that's the most important, right? So you have, at my job, there's a certain percentage of people we have to hire within the surrounding zip codes. So for this, I think that would be a great thing to do, to track how many people within that zip code are we hiring? How many Black people are we hiring? How many women are we hiring? We should be tracking those things and keeping up to make sure that this is something that is moving the Black community forward.
Thank you. Ms. Said?
I've recently been endorsed by the Sierra Club, and it's an organization that has been on the front line of environmental protections and supports. In fact, some of the environmental protections we will have to do at the state because our federal government is rolling back these protections. What I've promised is that on my team at the state level will be a liaison between the Sierra Club and other environmental protection organizations. I hope Blacks and Green and others will join us, and the community, because we have to do this work. It's absolutely important. Short term and in the ground on the 5th District, we have churches and community centers and urban planning happening all across the 5th District. Not enough, we need to continue growing it. For example, Life Center Church, run by Reverend T.L. Barrett, wants to build a whole new building next door. What I've done is connected them to the Sierra Club team because he wants to have their building be one of the models of green and solar building. So what we can do is ensure that that is happening between community organizations that want to do this work and then the resources that can help them do it, whether it's urban planning, whether it's a organization that can help them with funding, etc. Sierra Club will also ensure then, with districts like this, where the jobs are going across the state, how many jobs are going to be at this district, and whether those jobs are going to men or to women. So this is the kind of tracking we will work with them to understand better how we're doing this
wrap it up now.
in the 5th District.
Thank you. And Mr. Robinson?
The funding for these sort of programs have been cut by our current governor. And so I want to make sure that I go to Springfield to bring back funding for these programs that are desperately needed in our community, particularly the 5th District. We need to be able to have grants for these type of programs, but we also need to make sure that we have training. And we have in the 5th District, Dawson, City Colleges of Chicago, that can train youth or folks that want to go into green energy. We have the hub. We just have to be able to make a partnership and be able to train folks that way that they can have sustainable jobs. Because again, if you have a job, that will lower the crime rates that we're seeing in Chicago. But again, we do this right in our backyard at Dawson. But these grants, whether that come from the state of Illinois or corporate grants, we need to make sure that we hold the funding to the T. And what do I mean by that? If you're receiving a grant, you need to make sure that you're hiring African Americans, that there is teeth in that grant. And if you are hiring other groups that are not African American or minority groups, that money should be removed from you. You should pay that money back. We have to put teeth into these grant programs. Thank you.
Thank you. And continuing on the financial front, we're going to pivot to real estate property taxes. One of the tough tangles that we find ourselves in Cook County and beyond, but especially in Cook County, as some of you know. You heard some of the background in my introduction about the system which now disproportionately extracts tax dollars from black and brown communities and uses that to subsidize, of course, tax cuts to the wealthier taxpayers. And so we recognize that there are hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars at stake. So we'd like for you to go on the record tonight with which approach you support for tax assessment and why. So we're going to start with Ms. Saeed. Where do you stand on this issue?
None of us want to pay taxes, but taxes is what helps us get a civilized society, right? Taxes make sure that our trash is collected, that our schools are funded, that our police and our fire are funded. But what happens in Chicago is that when the taxes are assessed, and we believe that we might have taxes assessed incorrectly, when you are a wealthy owner and you have the social capital, you actually can access lawyers, et cetera, to change your assessment. What we have in many places in our 5th district and in low-income families is taxes that aren't assessed correctly. So you're almost paying for homeowners that have more expensive homes, but you are a less expensive home and you are a low-income owner. And then you don't have access to lawyers, and if you do, they're lawyers that are owned by our county assessor and work with our county assessor. So what we absolutely have to do is, I believe, number one is probably change our county assessor and vote someone in who's going to do this in a different way and in a much fairer way. And then number two, have a system that works across the board. So there's a lot we've got to get done in this space, and we need to move forward with the right person.
Mr. Robinson.
We are aware that folks on the south and west sides of Chicago are being taxed at a higher percentage than on the north end of Chicago or in the northern suburbs. So we know that we have a problem in the Cook County Assessor's Office, as Delara mentioned. And so we need to correct that by putting in a new Cook County Assessor. But let's go further. Because this has been such a detriment to our community, we need a property tax freeze. We need the property tax freeze because we know that this system has been corrupt. We know this system is wrong. And so how we do this is by correcting it is, again, having a new Cook County assessor, but then also having a property tax freeze. Until we know for certain that we are assessing homes across Cook County, across the state, that's fair. And I will go to Springfield to make sure that this happens. Thank you.
Ms. Bullock.
So we have to hold our elected officials accountable. That's the first step. We need to make sure that if they aren't doing their jobs, we have to speak up. That's first and foremost. We can't continue to sit by and let these unfair things kind of happen and affect our communities more than anyone else and not speak up. So we need to speak up. We need to hold our elected officials accountable because this is affecting our community more than anyone else. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bullock. Our next question continues the financial filter, and it's regarding affordable housing, the affordability of housing where our people who need an affordable filter most are located. So amid fears of gentrification, increasing unaffordability, and displacement in Black and brown Chicago neighborhoods, some are pushing for price caps on rental properties. Price controls on rent have been outlawed in Illinois for more than 20 years via the Illinois Rent Control Preemption Act of 1997, which precludes any municipality or city in the state from enacting laws controlling the rent prices of residential or commercial properties. State Rep. Will Guzzardi, a Democrat who represents Chicago neighborhoods on the northwest side, has formally introduced a bill repealing the law. In your opinion, should Chicago follow the lead of New York, San Francisco, D.C., and other cities to enact rent control? Would you support the Guzzardi bill? And are you affiliated with any candidates who have taken a public stand on this issue? And if so, who? And where do they stand? And we're going to start with Mr. Robinson.
I would agree with the Guzzardi bill, but we need to take this a step further. We need a $15 minimum wage. We need to make sure that people can pay their rent, that they can put food on the table, that there are jobs in our community, good paying jobs. That's extremely important. So even though we can do rent controls, we have to make sure people can live in Chicago, pay their rent, take care of their families. That's something that I have done as a small business owner. I pay my employees $15 an hour. I also served on the Quad Community Development Corporation that brought affordable housing to 47th and Cottage Grove. Again, I'm not just talking about what I will do. I'm talking about what I already have done as a small business owner, as a community leader. These are things that I will continue to do in Springfield for the 5th District.
Ms. Bullock?
I would support the Guzzardi bill. I think that this is important to combat, obviously, gentrification and pricing out Black people in our neighborhoods. I believe that we have seen it. Mike's going out a little bit. I believe that we've seen it already in Hyde Park where, people are being priced out. So to prevent that kind of thing happening in Bronzeville and South Shore and all across the district, I would support the Guzzardi bill.
And Ms. Said?
I've actually been talking with Will Guzzardi about his bill, and he and I absolutely are looking forward to working on it together. I support the Guzzardi bill. I met Ernestine 2 weeks ago. Her family has been living in Bronzeville for 3 generations when it was called the Low End. And what happened is over the last few years, she won't be able to live there anymore, and she's moving out next year. Why is that? Because the home she's renting now costs $500,000. Even if we went to minimum wage, she couldn't afford staying there. So it's not just about minimum wage, it's minimum wage and still protecting gentrification. What we have right now are bills that allow companies to build homes that cost more as long as 10% of their housing is set aside as fair housing, affordable housing. We don't hold them accountable. Down the street, there's a building being made, and instead of keeping it at 10% fair housing, they're just paying a fine and then keeping the whole building high rise and high rent. We need to first hold our developers accountable. They will make the money they need to, but it will still be fair if they just make sure that we do not displace people who've lived here for years.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to drill down a little bit more in the economic development sphere. We know that we have a very long district with very disparate neighborhoods, and we have established beyond a shadow of doubt that the neighborhoods where African Americans and Latinos live have suffered extreme disinvestment over the decades. So we want to hear more specifically what you are proposing that will bring jobs and increase or enlarge existing businesses in these disadvantaged neighborhoods. And we'll be starting with Ms. Bullock.
So, like I said, we want to attract businesses. We want to attract businesses to come to the 5th District, right? That includes, especially our small businesses. I believe that they are the fabric of the community. But with that, we have to make sure that these businesses are also giving back to us. So with tax incentives, with programs, I think we spoke about this a little bit yesterday. I would love to have a program that's educating people on how to run a business. A lot of time our people have a great idea or they have this amazing talent, but they aren't really sure how to run a business. So to be more specific, I would like to implement a program that would educate and help the people in the community know not only how to start a business, but how to maintain their business. And then I would love to put in place something where they are, again, required to hire within the zip code, hire within the community, and make sure that they are also giving back to us, and that it's a two-way street with the businesses in our district.
Thank you. And Ms. Saeed?
I'd like to have a three-prong approach to how we increase equity. As the League of Black Women says, it's about economic security and economic equality, right? So how do we do that? Number one, we have to make sure that big businesses that are coming to Chicago are attracted to South Side. For instance, Amazon coming to Chicago. For instance, Mariano coming to the communities. We need to make sure that they're coming to the South Side, that they're shown to revitalize that area, that they make sure that they're hiring from that community. Amazon doesn't need a whole lot of tax break. What it needs to do is to be held accountable to make sure that it's actually serving the community and employing our district residents. And then what you'll have is talent that's living, staying, praying, working in the district. Number two, small businesses have to have an opportunity to grow. The South Side has quite a bit of independent businesses, but they don't go anywhere and they don't flourish enough because more loans aren't given to them. And because when they need to grow, those types of resources to help them grow don't exist. And the third prong is entrepreneurship. I am an entrepreneur who started her own tech startup. We need incubators, and we have 3 in the South Side. Within my tenure, I will ensure that 5 more incubators are in the South Side helping young people start their own businesses with their ideas. This 3-prong approach will give us economic security across the spectrum.
Thank you. And Mr. Robinson?
I am very honored to be supported by Jesse White, Secretary of State here in the state of Illinois. And I want to make sure that I help Jesse White to be able to ease the burden for African Americans, African American women, to be able to start businesses. That's extremely important to me. We have to make it easy for folks to be able to start businesses. As an educator, someone that has taught entrepreneurship, focusing in on teaching students how to start businesses. I've lectured on this, whether that be at Daly College, Harold Washington, Kennedy King. I have helped people start businesses. I have helped people to start and build on business plans. It's something that I will continue to do as the next state rep in the 5th District. I am a board member of the Quad Community Development Corporation, as I mentioned before. This organization has helped bring businesses into the 5th District. I'm also on the Greater Inglewood CDC. The Greater Inglewood CDC has an incubator in Inglewood. Again, these are things that I already are doing currently as a business leader. I will continue to do these things as the next state rep in the 5th District. Thank you.
Okay, relationships. Who do you know? We recognize this is a city built on lots of deals that are perhaps under the table, behind closed doors, and tied to families and otherwise knitted in community relationships and clout that has cultivated over time. And yet we believe, as people for the big D democracy, that justice is possible and that we can achieve just results in a system that sometimes swerves to the left or swerves to the right. So this is a question about you and your relationships. Who do you know? What steps have you taken to get to know parts of the district that are less familiar to you? And in terms of legislation, you know the kinds of traumas that we've had in the legislature. We're looking to see whether you're going to be acting independently or whether you're going to toe the party line. It takes courage sometimes to speak truth to power and to stand. So what side of the equation will you fall on when it comes to the almighty vote, and how are you cultivating your relationships across race and class? And we are going to start with Ms. Said.
Thank you. You talked about what part of the district don't you know, and the reality is I've been all across the district over the last decade. As a Golden Apple leader, we have been in every school in the district. We have trained teachers and principals at their sites to work with trauma, to support students who've gone through trauma. We have worked with teachers and principals to support them in being STEM trained so that they can ensure the best type of science and math courses are in their schools. I've done this across the district from the north to the south. In terms of business, my office has been in this district for the last 6 years, whether it was at the Golden Apple in Michigan Avenue, whether it's my tech startup in the South Loop, or whether it's my campaign office at 6510 South Cottage Grove in a historic part of this district. Please come and join us. All of this work has been part of the relationships I've built. I don't know Michael Madigan. I've met him once. I know the alderman, but I would love for her to come and get to know us a little bit more. And what I've done is built relationships with faith leaders, community leaders, and residents, working, living, and playing across the district with all of you for years.
Mr. Robinson, independence or party line, and how are you getting to know folks across race and class?
I'm getting to know folks across race and class by just meeting with the Division Street Bar Association members, which is on the north end of the district. I went to their meeting and was asked to go to their meeting to find out what their issues and concerns are. And so, even though I live on the south end of the district, I want to make sure that I know what the issues and concerns are on the north end of the district. I'm also making sure that I meet with all of the aldermen that make up the 5th District and build bridges with them.
Which aldermen are those, by the way?
Sure. So I am supported by Alderman Pat Dow.
Not who's supporting you, but which are the aldermen for the 5th District?
Sure. So I have met with Brendan Riley. I have met with Alderman Pat Dow. I have met with Alderman Roderick Sawyer. So I have met with many of the aldermen and committeemen, Dr. Davis, in this district, because I understand it's going to take all of us to be able to move the 5th district forward. I want to be able to be a catalyst and be a voice of the district. And you do that by listening to the concerns of the district, which I have done every single day, by walking the district, hearing the cries, the concerns from the residents in the district. And I will continue to do this as the next state rep in the 5th district.
Okay, so I have been extremely open about this process and how it has been going for me. I am not supported by the party, and at the end of the day, I feel like that is going to be a tremendous blessing for me. Mostly because, you know, party support isn't free. At the end of the day, it comes with a cost. And I want to truly be a voice for the community. And so for me, I want to get to Springfield not owing anybody any favors, but truly being a voice for my community. As far as getting to know parts of the district that I'm not as familiar with, like I said, I moved to Bronzeville, my first apartment out of college. My husband and I currently reside in Bronzeville, so that's obviously going to be the community that I'm the most familiar with. And I've been a South Sider my whole life, so I'm familiar with the South Side. But I'm doing the same thing on the north end of the district as I am on the south end of the district, and that's going door to door, that's meeting people, talking to people, hearing their concerns. And, you know, also, we're in a new age. This is 2018, so we have a lot of means to communicate with people. I've been posting on Facebook. I have a website. People reach out to me that way. I just had someone message me through the website and say, I saw your door hanger. You know, I'd like to talk to you, get to know you. People reach out on Facebook and say, I just want to grab a cup of coffee. I live in the district. I want to meet you. I've met people that way. So I'm using all forms of communication as well as just being out there, hearing the concerns of the people, and I'm going to continue to do that.
Thank you, Ms. Bullock. And the rebuttal or clarification from Ms. Said?
I think we all live in the district, but clearly the support that some of us have been getting has been different than others. Felicia and I have both been asked to step down and step out of this race. And we've been asked by our alderman who's supporting Lamont Robinson. She's asked us to step out so that he can have this race. That concerns us. In the last week, 3 contributors have provided $150,000 to Lamont Robinson's campaign. I think it's very difficult when those 3 state reps who've provided the funding are very closely tied to the Democratic establishment to then be independent in any way. It's not easy. It takes a lot of courage to run. And it's not easy. It takes a lot of courage to be a state representative that truly speaks for and with the people. But it is very important for the voters to understand where we're being supported from and how independent we can be when we go to Springfield.
Thank you.
Dr. Davis?
Yes,
Thank you.
you're allowed to reply, rebut, clarify.
I would like to say that as a business leader for 15 years, I've had many people that have supported my campaign. And yes, I am supported by the party, but both of the women that's sitting next to me also went to the same meetings, also asked to receive the support of the party. And so, yes, I have received the support of the party, but here again, let me be clear, and let's not be dishonest to the folks that are here. The 2 women that are sitting with me also went to the same meetings. I was chosen because I am the best candidate for the state rep in the 5th district. I have stakes in the community. As I mentioned to you before, I have put the footwork that is needed to move the 5th district forward, and I will continue to do that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson.
And I'll rebut to that.
You have that right. I'm here to preserve that right, so go for it.
Tell it.
I just want to say that the party reached out to us and vetted candidates, so I never sought out the party to ask for an endorsement. This was a part of, you know, they did vet candidates, and I was a part of that process, but I did not reach out to the party. And also, hindsight is 20/20, right? in the beginning of this process, I had no idea how ugly it was going to turn, that they were going to try to force people out of the race, that they were going to challenge only the women that filed to be on the ballot. So for me, looking back and seeing how this has turned out and how ugly it's gotten, that's why I will again say it is a blessing to not be supported by the party. Thank
And
you.
for a man who supports women, you sure went along with it.
Okay, well, this is not that.
Thank you. Thank you.
We've each had a chance to clarify, and we are moving on. Concerns and positions duly noted. And just in case we didn't have enough hot button issues, here we go. Charter or public? Okay, it's an ongoing question, debate, concern, and churn. Advocates for charter schools and voucher programs suggest the poor performance of CPS students is due to the failing public schools we have. Do you agree with this? And if you do or if you don't, how would you improve public education? And on this, we are starting with Ms. Said. I'm sorry, Mr. Robinson.
I would help to improve our public education by making sure that we put more funding into our neighborhood schools. There shouldn't be any reason that you need to drive from the south end of the district to the north end of the district to get a quality education. Our schools need to be equitable. We should not be putting money into our charter schools. We need a moratorium on charter schools. We need a moratorium on school closures. There's someone that sits up here that's an educator who worked for Chicago Public Schools. And in that time for Barbara Byrd Bennett is when money was stolen from Chicago Public Schools. Schools were closed. Charters were on the rise. So understand who is sitting up here and who has the voice and the concerns of the people. And the people do not want any more charters. They want equitable schools. They want their schools to be funded equally across the district. And I will do that. My mother, who is sitting here tonight, took money out of her own pocket to give to her students. That shouldn't be right in a great city of Chicago. We should have schools that are equitable, programs that are across the city, the same, one district, not different districts, not two tales, two cities, but equitable schools, great schools for all children that live in the district. Whether they're white, black, we need to have proper education, proper funding. And I will do that as the next state rep in the 5th district.
That would be your time. Ms. Bullock.
So I think you can probably guess from my intro that I would be pro-public schools and pro-CPS because I am a product of CPS. I like to make sure that I always reiterate that because it's just a conversation that comes up, you know, especially I think at my age, my friends are having children and a lot of people have the discussion, I'm going to move to the suburbs for a quality education, or, you know, CPS can't provide a quality education. But I like to believe that myself, my husband, my siblings are proof that that's not true. So I think that we can adequately fund our CPS schools and have a situation where you don't have to move to the suburbs for a quality education. That shouldn't be the case. We should have quality schools right in our communities. Thank you.
Ms. Said, how do we improve the schools? Are you for public or charter?
The number one thing we must do in the state of Illinois is improve our public school system. I have been working for public schools, neighborhood schools, for 20 years of my life. And there are two ways we can do it. Number one, we put a hold on charter schools and do some testing so that we understand what they're being held accountable for and where they need to improve. Charters were supposed to be an innovation playground where they did some really cool things and brought it back to the public schools. Right now, what they are doing is taking public funding and not necessarily bringing anything back. So there has to be a hold on charter schools. Number two, public state funding for all school systems has to increase. Illinois is 50th out of 50 states in education funding. Yeah, my friends, 50th out of 50 states. You need a state representative from the 5th district that will go down to Springfield and let them know what's going on 200 days out of the year when the social worker is cut, when the librarian is cut, when students don't have educators who've been trained in trauma and STEM and in the key areas where we need to develop the next generation of students. I will be an educator who goes down and fights for our children and our families for public school education.
Thank you.
Dr. Davis, may I have a challenge, please?
Yes.
Delara, as an educator, I am saddened to be up here with you as an
Okay,
educator.
now,
to
this is
know
what,
that
excuse me,
I'm getting
this
to
is
the
what
point.
we're not going to
Yes.
do. We're going to, we're not going to jaunt
for
back and
testing.
forth between each
For
other.
testing.
We're going to address your issues, your
The
stands, your
issue
solutions.
that I have is on testing. We know that we are over-testing our children, particularly in the African American community. We have to stop this. We have to stop this as educators. We need to put more funding in our schools. We need to have wraparound services in our schools. We need to have money for after-school programs, but we need to get away from over-testing our kids, particularly our African American kids. And so that's what my point is that yes, we need to strengthen our neighborhood schools, but we should not be over-testing our children in the 5th district, particularly on the south end of the district. That's not fair to them, and we should know better.
Thank you. A clarification or rebuttal, Ms. Said?
Yeah. Actually, I'm so glad you brought it up. So what we're doing with our students, and not just over-testing them, we're not giving the data back to the educators so that they can actually make a difference in the same school year. Park testing was just put on hold this week in the state of Illinois. And the reason is the testing is too long, the testing is not completely aligned with the curriculum, and the actual teachers don't even get the test scores till the next fall. So it's too late to do anything to help the students right now. Let's understand the testing process and what's wrong with it, and then let's go down to the state, and I will go there and let them know what needs to shift. Shorter tests, fewer tests, and data that comes back to teachers right away so that they can make a difference in the teaching and learning that's going on in our classrooms.
Thank you. And so to follow that train of thought regarding our children, our youth, their well-being and their ability to thrive, we're going to pivot to gun violence and access to guns and the prevalence of guns in the hands of people who should not have them are a problem. What have you done? What would you do regarding regulating guns? Where are the guns coming from? How do we stem that tide? And how do we change that culture? We're going to start with Ms. Bullock.
So a lot of these guns are coming from outside the state. We need to crack down on the gun issue here in Illinois, particularly in Chicago. Our communities specifically are being affected. I touched on this yesterday. We have an issue in the Black community with guns, on the South Side with guns. If you live on the South Side, this is something that you probably have to face every day. And it shouldn't be acceptable. We need to crack down on where people are getting these guns from, as well as, the background testing that we're doing to be able to buy a gun. We also have these mass shootings is also an issue. I went to NIU and they just were recognizing that it's been 10 years since our school shooting. I was there when we had a fatal school shooting. So for me, this issue, it hits home. It's extremely important. And I think we need to put some legislation to make sure that guns are not coming across the line from Indiana or anywhere else, and that we are doing proper background checks.
Thank you, Ms. Said.
Gun violence impacts no place greater than schools. I have watched children and their families torn apart because a loved one has died or is maimed by gun violence. And actually, in this district, I understand that gun violence impacts across the district. In Chicago, we have about the same type of number of homicides and robberies as any other major city. The difference in Chicago is the amount of guns and how fatal those robberies and issues become. Because of the illegal guns that come from Indiana and from the suburbs, in Chicago, the biggest difference between us and any other city in the country that has the highest violence rates is the number of guns we have here. We need to send a state representative, and I will be that representative that is not beholden to the NRA, not beholden to the National Rifle Association, not beholden to the party, not afraid to say, stop the flow of illegal guns. Stop the selling of assault weapons. Have laws that register and certify gun owners. Ensure that anyone with mental illness cannot have a gun or can buy one. These are the kinds of courageous things that our state reps have to do, because this is an issue that can be taken care of at the state, but we got to have state reps who will do it. And I will be that person.
Thank you. Mr. Robinson.
Dr. Davis, one of your questions was, what have we done currently? I run a mentoring program with 84 African American males, and we talk about gun violence. We are keeping these young men away from drugs, away from gangs, away from guns, by showing them opportunity. Opportunity is what's needed. We need to show them that they can go to college, that they can be greater in their society. We need to be able to create programs that gets our youth away from drugs, away from gangs, away from guns. We do this in after-school programs. We do this by creating jobs within our community. We can go at this with strengthening gun laws, which are needed, but we need to look at the root cause. And the root cause is opportunity. The root cause is jobs. And we have to be able to bring jobs in our community. We have to be able to bring economic development in our community. When I've walked in South Shore, Woodlawn, Park Manor, those areas have been devastated. There are no opportunities in those areas. We have to create opportunities for our youth. And that's what I will do as the next state rep in the 5th District.
Thank you. We've talked some about relationships, who we know, how we know them. We're going to pivot to the other major need for knowledge, wisdom, experience, and that's regarding the budget itself. Talk to me about your experience with budgets, your understanding of the Illinois state budgets. You might want to mention if you, in a flash of brilliance, have a solution for the pension crisis, and just generally enlighten us about your heat and light on the subject of state budgets. And we're going to start with Ms. Saeed.
As Chief Education Officer of the Golden Apple, I was responsible and worked with a 8-digit budget. And it meant that we worked across the state with thousands of teachers and principals to help develop better education systems. As a small businesswoman and in my tech startup, I've worked with a 5-digit budget. So I understand a small business and I understand a large business. And what we do, regardless of the budget that we have, is ensure we've got revenue coming in, strong programs that we're committed to, and we are meeting our budget. The fact that our state has not had a budget and has been pushing this on to us as residents is unacceptable. What we must do is bring stakeholders to the table and think about the ways to generate more revenue. Now, we only get 30 more seconds, so I'm going to quickly give you about 4 ideas which we have to explore. Number 1, a graduated income tax. Illinois is one of 8 states that doesn't have it. It's kind of common sense. We have to move towards it. Number 2, explore things like legalizing marijuana, not mainly for the revenue. It's the right thing to do. It supports criminal justice reform because the wrong people are being put in jail and being punished for marijuana, but we'll also get revenue.
Now, Ms. Saeed, thank
So
you.
just a couple ideas. Please go on our website at www.votedelara.com.
Thank
All
you.
of them are listed there.
Thank you very much.
And Mr. Robinson, please.
As a small business owner, as well as an educator that teaches entrepreneurship, I've been very fortunate enough to help people with their budget, to make sure that they have enough revenue to be able to start a business. I have 7 employees, 2 operations, one in Bronzeville, one in Humboldt Park. I have to make sure that I keep an eye on my budget because there are people that count on me. Yes, my family counts on me, but I also have 7 people that count on me to be able to feed their families and to provide for their families. And so with that said, when we talk about pensions, my mother, again, is a Chicago public school teacher who's retired, who receives a pension. And so I want to make sure that my mother, who has paid into the pension, continues to receive the benefit that's due to her. But we need to be able to shore our pensions up with looking outside the box, looking at gaming, but gaming only if minority African Americans are going to have a seat at the table, that they're going to have jobs in management, that they're going to have ownership in that casino. Also, making sure that we legalize marijuana, but that we own the dispensaries. We have lots of ways to bring revenue into the state, and let me finish up by also closing loopholes for millionaires and billionaires. They need to pay their fair share. If we do these things, we should be able to shore up the budget here in the state of Illinois. Thank you.
Mr. Robinson. And Ms. Bullock.
So on a small scale, I touched on it a little bit earlier, that personally, I live by a budget. My husband and I have been somewhat recognized for our journey to becoming debt-free. So that's sort of, for me, I would never go to Springfield and vote for things that would put the state in more debt because I personally don't believe in debt in my own life. And on a larger scale, as stated before, I've been in procurement since 2010. So budgets, that's my wheelhouse. Purchasing, that's my wheelhouse. That's what I do every single day, responsible for projects that, go up to millions of dollars and make sure that we're allocating funding where it needs to go. So for me, budgeting is, something that I'm completely ready to do, that I'm already doing on a day-to-day basis. I, too, have parents who one is receiving a pension and one is currently working in the union, and she will receive her pension when she retires. So I'm all for pensions, but I don't ever want to be in a place where we can't pay people, because if we keep going at the rate that we're going with $130 billion, we won't be able to pay people's pensions. So we definitely need to look at revamping that debt, re-amortizing that debt, and possibly paying it over a longer period of time.
Thank you, Ms. Bullock. Ms. Saeed wanted an amplification on that.
I think it's the one thing we all in this entire room agree on, right? Let's make the state fiscally responsible. But we also want to be careful. There's a lot of ideas put on the table, and some of them in the long run are not helpful to our communities. They're not helpful to the communities that are actually the most underserved. One of them is gaming. The lottery we all know what the lottery was promised to do. It was supposed to go to education. It was supposed to help us fund education, and we're still the state that's 50th out of 50th. Let me show you what the lottery revenues have been. The graph looks like this. The lottery revenues have gone up like this. And the revenue that's gone to education has been like this. Why? Because we are not putting agreements together that make sense for the communities that need that money for their schools. So when we go to the table and we're addressing different issues and ideas, please let's put people at the table who know the numbers and who know the pros and the consequences of our decisions.
Thank you. And as we come toward the end of our questions and prepare for our closing statements, we have just a couple of general questions for you, which will target in on your opinion about the governor's race and your opinion about yourself as candidate. Who do you like for governor and why? What standards are you using as you make those assessments? And what makes the best governor? Is that the same thing that applies to you? What makes you the best candidate for this office? So who's the best governor? Who's the best 5th District representative and why? And we're going to start with Mr. Robinson.
I believe that the candidates all are bringing up great issues. I am focusing in on my own race, and that is to make sure that I bring economic development to the 5th District, jobs, making sure that we have equitable schools, that we bring down the gun violence, and that we have a safer 5th District that's moving forward. But whether the governor is, unfortunately, Bruce Rauner, J.B. Pritzker, Tito Hardeman, Kennedy, I am looking to work with any of them to make sure that I bring resources desperately needed to the 5th District. And so, again, whoever is in the governor's mansion, I want to work with to make sure that I am bringing resources back to the 5th District. That will be my plan of attack as the next state rep in the 5th District. Thank you.
That doesn't answer the question, but if that's the answer that you're filing, then we'll go with that. Let's go to Ms. Bullock.
So just to be completely transparent, I have not yet decided who I am going with for governor in this race. I will say this, though. I will say that it's extremely interesting to see the Democratic candidates choose black running mates and to hear some of the things that we've heard recently about what goes on behind the scenes as far as, you know, picking and choosing black candidates. For me personally, I think that, you know, we want inclusion, but we want to be included because we're qualified for the job, not because you're just sticking a black person up there as a pawn to say, oh, this is how we're going to get the black vote, this is how we're going to get the woman vote. For me, that's unacceptable. And as far as my race goes, I believe that I'm the best candidate because I've shown throughout this process that I'm not afraid to speak truth to power and stand up for what is right. And I will continue to do that during this process and on this campaign, and I will definitely do that in Springfield if elected. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bullock. Ms. Said?
It's interesting that you juxtapose the governor's race with our race, because I don't know who I'm going to vote for the governor's race, but it means a lot to us right now. High stakes at the governor's race, high stakes at this 5th state representative race. What I'm looking for is the kind of person that we want in both of these offices. I'm looking for someone with integrity. I really am. Our state deserves it, and our residents of the 5th District deserve it. I'm looking for someone who's authentic and independent, someone who's not connected to party affiliation, someone who's not connected to money affiliation, someone who's not bought, someone who's not beholden. I want the only thing that we want to care about are the residents that we serve and the people of the state of Illinois. I also think it's really important to have someone who understands the policies and the issues that are at stake. This is a critical moment for Illinois. It's a critical moment for the 5th District. Someone who understands education, someone who understands businesses, and someone who understands criminal justice reform and public safety. The issues are the same across the state and across our district. We might think of them differently, whether we're in the north or the south of the state or the district, but we care about these issues and we need our representatives to know them well.
Thank you. And kind of pulling some of those considerations together of education, finance, and the policy decisions in the relationships that drive policies, both at the city, county, and state level. We're going to end with a question about TIF districts as a financing tool. We recognize that, for example, recently $55 million of TIF money, which for those who don't know TIFs, if you want to look at Tom Tresser's website on TIFs, they are enumerated meticulously and broken down ward by ward, TIF district by TIF district, and you can see how money which is extracted from the budgets and the cash flows of schools and parks are used to, quote unquote, spur investment in so-called blighted areas. And so we've seen consistent abuses, to be perfectly frank about it, over the years. And while we are closing schools for reasons associated with financial inequities or irregularities or lacks and disparities. So tell us what, where you stand on the issue of TIF financing as it affects the, as it impacts the operation of these public institutions, is the word I was looking for, in your district. We're going to start with Ms. Said.
Tax incremental financing is when you have a tax level that you're collecting taxes at. But because of certain improvements that happened in a community, they happen to collect more than you thought you would collect. That extra is the tax incremental financing, the TIF. And what we do is we say, okay, blighted areas, areas that couldn't have gotten better without extra support, will get that extra money. What's been happening, unfortunately, it is not going to areas that need it. It's going to fund development and to fund other areas that would have done great even without it. And that's the problem. I suggest a full study of where TIFs have been spent, how they've been collected, and how we can do better by ensuring the places that TIF is spent are places that wouldn't have gotten a chance to get better anyway. For example, 4 schools are slated to be closed in Englewood right now. One of them is in our district, Team Englewood. What I suggest we do is keep Harper School open, which is one of the 4 schools for sure, and put some TIF funding into Harper School. Make it a school that is then got special training, maybe an area that's doing tech training or vocational training. And that can be where the TIF monies are spent for Harper. So one use at a local level of something we're trying to do across the state. That makes that a good use of TIF.
Thank you. And Mr. Robinson.
If TIF being used correctly is extremely important. As someone that serves on the Greater Englewood CDC, or Quad Community Development Corporation, TIF is needed to shore up areas of blight. I have worked with both community organizations to put TIF into the hands of small business owners, to be able to expand their businesses, to be able to reinvest in their businesses, to be able to create more jobs. But we all know that there are some transparency issues with TIF, and we need to make sure that we know where our TIF dollars are going. I will say that there are certain areas where they have overfunded TIFs. And when you have a surplus, those funds need to be put back into our Chicago public schools. Schools that have been underfunded. That has happened in the 3rd Ward. The TIF surplus has been put back into our schools. And we need to do this across the city of Chicago. If, again, there is surplus in the TIFs, they need to go back into our neighborhood schools. That's extremely important. But we also need transparency, because TIF dollars can revitalize corridors that need it, like 51st Street or 79th Street or 63rd Street. Areas in the community that need an economic development jolt.
Look at that. We completely agree.
Finally.
Point of clarification. Were you saying that wasn't the 3rd Ward where the 55 million was ported to the DePaul Stadium?
Yes, but also, Dr. Davis, the TIF surplus was put back into our neighborhood schools.
Not that 55 million, though.
Not the 55 million, but
Okay.
the TIF surplus was put back into our neighborhood schools. And so again,
Where did that come from?
If there is surplus within the TIF, they should be going back into our neighborhood schools.
Understood.
That's extremely important.
Understood. And so we have time for our closing statements. Oh, I'm sorry. Miss Bullock, you got me all upset here. Okay.
So TIF only works if these funds are actually being implemented in the areas where they should, right? So for me, this goes back to holding our elected officials accountable. We have to speak up. We have to, when things aren't right, when we know that there's money that could have gone into our public school system that are being spent on other things, we have to stand up and we have to, speak out for what's right. And especially when we always want to come back to that our schools are underfunded. But if we have this money that we can be using for the schools, that's just not, it's just ridiculous. So we should be upset about this, and we should be holding our elected officials accountable.
Thank you. I want to just survey the room if there's one last question before we come to our closing statements for the evening. Sir? All right, so he beat you out, but y'all want to confer on that, or y'all good?
So what was the purpose of us giving you the cards if you didn't answer the questions on the card?
I took all of the questions on the cards that weren't already answered. Was there a particular question that you wanted to put forward?
Party line, are you vulnerable to speak on everything while we are on Independence Day?
I did ask that question.
I didn't hear anyone say that they would.
Well, the answers are the answers, but the question was asked, as I've said. Sir?
Hi, my question is, we ask you every day on our show, what's in it for the
What show?
The WVON morning show.
Okay.
We ask every morning, what's in it for the black people? I see 3 candidates sitting here, Illinois leads.
Oh, excuse me, sir. Let's get a microphone to you, please, because folks can't hear you.
Hi, my name is Mace Jackson. I am the host of the WVOM Morning Show. We ask every single day, what is in it for the black people? Black people are at the last of 16 economic indicators here in the state of Illinois. We have the highest black unemployment in the state, in the country.
In the country.
It is the worst state. There's six of the 10 worst cities in the nation are in Illinois for black people. So we want to know today from these candidates who will be representing black people, what's in it for the black people from your candidacy.
And for this sequence, we'll go to, I think we're going to Mr. Robinson.
Thank you for that question. I knew it was coming. Contracts, jobs, being able to be at the table, being able to go to Springfield, and when contracts are given, making sure that we get our due share, to fight it tooth and nail until we make sure that we are getting our due process. That is something that I will do as the next state rep in the 5th District, to make sure that there are teeth in legislation when we are doling out money on contracts, that there are people, compliance officers, that make sure that if we are giving grants to organizations that are building and they're supposed to have African Americans at that job site, that they do have African Americans at that job site. We need compliance officers to be able to do this. That is something that I will make sure that gets done as the next state rep in the 5th District. That is what is in for the black people. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bullock, please.
For me, I have a vested interest in this. Obviously, we all live in the district, but I live in the district. My husband and I want to raise our family in this district. So when I think about what's best for the community in the district, I'm thinking about a place to raise my children, my black children. So for me, it goes back to my platform. I want to make sure that our schools in the community are funded so that I'm not trying to move to the suburbs or ship my kids off to some school that's 20 minutes away. I want quality schools in the district. I want access to quality health care and healthcare-related programs as well. I want to take care of our seniors. There were programs that Governor Rauner cut that were taking care of our seniors, in-home care for our seniors. There was a suggestion made that we should put our seniors in an Uber to get to their appointments. I want to take care of our seniors. And public safety is an important one for me. Obviously, when I think about a community that I want to raise my kids in, I want it to be safe. We need to fund our after-school programs. Kids won't get into nonsense when they have somewhere to go after school. And so that's what's in it for the black people.
Thank you. And
What's-
yes.
What's in it for black people? Number one is education. In this city, your zip code determines the kind of quality education that you will have. And the black zip codes on the south side do not get the best funding, do not get the best teachers, and do not get the best programs. I've been working for 10 years in the district in the South to try to get the best funding, the best programs, and the best teachers into this district in the zip codes where African American communities live so that they can improve. Number two, it's public safety. Gun violence in the south side of Chicago and in the west side of Chicago, so I'll focus on the south side where our district is one of the highest in the country. That has to shift, and I will be a state representative that is unafraid, unbought, and unbossed, willing to go down there and stand up and say we need these laws. And number three, we must have jobs. You talked about the highest unemployment rate. There are certain parts of this district where the unemployment rate is between 50 and 75% for African American men. The best way to stop a bullet is with a job. So you make sure people have jobs, that they can live here safely, that they can work here, that they can play here. And then what you've got is communities that families want to move into, black families that are leaving the state want to move into and stay in the state and in our district. That's what's in it for black families.
And so we,
Can I make a point of clarification?
yes, sir.
I do not want the residents of the room to leave here thinking that there are schools in the district that there are not. Dulles, Team Inglewood, Harper are not in the district. So we want to make sure we're educating the residents here, and we need to make sure when we're talking about schools
Team Inglewood's in the district.
that we know that schools are in the district and what schools are not in the district. Team Inglewood is not in the district. Harper is not in the district. Thank you.
Okay, and with that, we're going to move to our closing statements. Thank you, audience, for listening in a very engaged way. Thank you, candidates, for bringing your best to the table and sharing. I think you can see we have 3 unique, distinct candidates, some good breadth for you to choose from, and we will have our closing statements, starting with Mr. Robinson.
Thank you for this opportunity. As I started out, as someone that is an educator who has helped people start businesses, someone that runs a nonprofit for African American boys to understand what opportunities they have before them, to be able to reach for the stars, someone who is a small business owner that has created jobs in the community, someone that has been fighting for the issues and the concerns of the residents of the 5th District. These are all things that I'm currently doing, not that I am going to do. You need to elect a state representative that has already been working in the community, that does not work for an institution that does not care about the community. Someone that has not just recently moved into the community. Someone that has planted seeds in the community, that understands where the schools are in the district, the concerns of the district, the cries of the district. That is Lamont Robinson. I am going to Springfield with your support to be able to hear your concerns, be able to address them. And just like I said last night, if I have fallen short, I will not be back 2 years from now. I am here, like I always have been, to support the community. I'm very thankful for the support I have, but again, that support does not tie me to making sure that I make you proud, my mother proud, and the African American males that I have mentored for the last 6 years proud. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ms. Saeed.
A few weeks ago, I knocked on the door, and a voice inside said, you can come in, but I'm not going to come to the door. It was James. I spent 10 minutes understanding that James had worked all his life and was ill and was retired. He was worried about his pension. He was worried about his health. He was worried about his kids, who were black men and women. I'm raising a son. His name is Sajid, and when he goes out, my heart is in my throat. Sajid is brown, and his last name is Saeed. We live in a city, in a state, and in a country that's growing in its divisions, in wealth, in the way people see each other, in the way we are continuing to talk to each other. One of the things that's coming out of a Trump presidency and a Rauner governorship is actually collaboration, coalitions, people who've been at different places in the state coming together, in the city and in this country, coming together to work together. What we need right now are bridge builders. I understand what it feels like to be poor and to come from a family that struggled. I also understand what it feels like to have worked your life, built a life, and wanting to secure a retirement that's strong. I understand what it feels like to be a woman of color, where just last week I walked into a store and I was ignored. And I understand what it looks like to be passed over for a job because of the way I do my hair or the color of my skin. But the silver lining is how we've come together over the last year. With the travel ban, with Charlottesville, with the violence, we are coming together as a community. And this is the silver lining. These are the kind of people we want at the state level, collaborators and those who will build bridges. I look forward to working for you at the state.
Thank you, Ms. Said. Ms. Bullock, bring us on home.
So I just want to first thank everyone for coming out and thank the League of Black Women for putting this together. I think that this event, both last night and today, were great events, and I think that the work that they're doing is extremely important. Black women just face issues that are unique. You know, we have issues, socioeconomic issues, we have issues, with pay, we have issues with how the violence in our communities affects us as wives and mothers and sisters and daughters. So I just really admire the work that these women are doing, and I want to thank you for putting this together. But, to close this out, I've been very open about this entire process. This has been a whirlwind for me. It was always my dream to run for office. And it's been an experience, a learning experience. It's been a lot of peaks and valleys, the main peak being people. The people in the 5th District are some of the best people that I've ever met. Kind, offer to help me, pray for me. Some of the best people that I've met in my life, I've met through this process. And that has truly been a blessing. But it's also been eye-opening to see some of the valleys, some of the things that we discussed tonight, to see that only the women were challenged who filed to get on the ballot. And that just, to me, proves how far women have to go, both in this arena and in others. And also, to have our elected officials ask people to withdraw and try to push people out of the race, for me, that's just unacceptable. That's not what democracy is about. You all, the voters, should decide who wins this race. And I'm going to keep fighting to make sure that you guys are able to make that decision. And that is why I'm here asking for your support and your vote. Thank you.
Don't you just love democracy? A round of applause for these candidates. Don't you just love it? No matter which candidate seems to reflect your self-interest or which qualities seem to be shining for you, it takes cojones to get out here on the campaign trail. And so I just want to acknowledge you and thank you for your commitment to the opportunity to serve. And once again, I want to thank the League of Black Women. I want to thank our host tonight, Adler University. It's a good feeling to know that we can have a more just society working together, again, across the bounds of race and class. The 5th District, like America, it has very different people and places. And yet, we all have one common thing. We're all humans. We all have that need for the basics of love and respect, shelter, opportunity for income. And off to the races we go. Thank you for coming out tonight. Let's see which candidate will take us across the finish line for a higher, better future. Thank you.
Before you go, I wanted to thank the candidates and thank those of you who came out tonight, and also to encourage you to get ready for what it is you have to do, which is what you do when you vote is you form your own best idea of what you want for your own governance. You cannot do that if you are uninformed. I'm going to encourage you again to download, read the Black Women's Economic Agenda White Paper. It is a policy framework. A lot of the questions, particularly those from the audience, are addressed here. When you know this, then you can drive that. So many times we fight for a seat at the table when if we would understand this, we can own the table. It's a very different shift in dynamics. So So it's the difference between what you know and what you do about what you know. And maybe lastly, I'm going to remind some of us who were maybe around in 1972 voting that there was a catchphrase going around when people were trying to figure out how to get to the heart of what the meat of the discussion needed to be. And James Carville said, "It's the economy, stupid." It's the economy. It's still the economy, only this time it's our economy. And so when you ask what's in it for black folks, it's our chance at forming and controlling the resources that will drive our economy. And if we can do that, get our hands about the 1.3 trillion spending and turn it into a 1.3 trillion investing, the economy is ours. All right? We don't have a problem. We are educated. Oftentimes when people talk about black women, what our needs are, they say, well, you know, we need better schools and we need better this and we need better that. And I wonder, who are they talking about? We are the most highly educated people in the United States of America. We are. When they say we don't have safe neighborhoods and what to do about gun violence, I went to a concert. My husband took me a big surprise concert to see Joe the other day. And, you know, we could not bring a gun into the concert. We had not planned to do that anyway. But not only could we not bring a gun, I couldn't bring in my bag. I had to check my bag at the hotel attached to the stadium because they controlled who could bring what into the environment. And yet we act as though we have no control over what is in our environments and around us. We can control this. All we have to do is make the determination that we are going to do it. These fine people want to represent us in Springfield. And if their careers go the way they want them to go, I don't expect them to shy away from that. I expect somebody is going to go to Springfield and some other people are going to keep going in other directions. But what you send them to do matters. How you evaluate what they do matters. And what you do about what you do is everything. So I'm saying to you, you do more than vote. You have to campaign for excellence in representation. You have to campaign for wealth and economic policy. And you have to campaign for absolute safety regarding who has what kinds of resources for death and destruction anywhere near you and yours. The League of Black Women was founded in 1970. We have been 40-plus years on the campaign trail of charting out a strategy for the delivery of black people from difficult situations into situations of prosperity. We are here at the point of decision. We are here at the point of decision. And the good news is, it's ours. It's ours. So I'm asking you not only to vote yourselves, but grab everybody who has anything to do with you in your life and take them to the polls with you and tell them to choose the best opportunity for your representation in your lives, because we got plans. Go to the League of Black Women's website, because that's where the wonderful document is. Join the League of Black Women, because I'm smart because of what we do. And when you join, we'll even be smarter. And finally, support the black women in your lives and your community, because they anchor everything. Everything that is and ever was starts here. And for my sisters, this is an invitation to my sisters, all right? Follow us. We know the way. We absolutely know the way. When you talk about joining women together and all of us marching shoulder to shoulder and arm in arm, I got to tell you, if you've noticed what some of the successes have been over the recent months and years, our lead has been the place you move to for victory. Trust us on this. We know the way. Please, enjoy yourselves this evening. Go home, get warm, and thank you for coming out.